Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the EOcafe. Today we have the pleasure of talking about the Global Action for Space with guests from the Commission and the team leader for the Global Action for Space. EOcafe rules, just a quick reminder. I think most of you will have been here before, but just a quick reminder to keep your microphones off unless I specifically invite you to speak. But you're very welcome to keep your cameras on, and it's great to see people. If you want to ask a question, please put it into the chat, and we'll turn to you and let you ask the question at the appropriate time. So today, as I said, we have specifically two guests, Mr. Luis Cuervo from the Commission and Mr. Andreas Becker, who is the leader for the EO Global Action on Space. Before asking them to introduce themselves, let's just say that the Global Actions for Space was launched the back end of last year. It's a new activity, I think, from the Commission, but we'll hear about that in due time. It's about trying to introduce European competencies globally. Back in 2012, as Copernicus, or GMES as it was then, was just getting going, there was a lot of discussion about free and open data policy, and we did a study looking at the implications of the EU of open data policy for the system, and basically supported the idea of free and open data policy on the basis that if people have already paid, so taxpayers already paid for the data, why should they pay twice? And I think this was exactly right, and is a good policy. But we did ask questions about, should this be a global free and open data policy? Because after all, it's European taxpayers who paid, not global taxpayers. But the recommendation at the time was that this would be a policy issue, so it should be free and open. So at the same time, we said, okay, that's fine. But then companies which are European trying to do business outside Europe will face competitors who are also benefiting from the free and open data policy. Therefore, there should be some specific action in order to help the European companies do business internationally. So I'm not so sure whether there was such a direct link or not, but for me, the Global Action for Space is a response to that sort of policy decision, and is very, very welcome in what's being done. So without further ado, let me introduce Luis Cuervo and Andreas Becker, and perhaps Luis, Andreas, you'd like just to introduce yourselves and your background and what you're working on now, what you're doing now.
Thank you.
Luis?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much to EARSC, Geoff, Natasha, and the team for the invitation. As it happens, I've been, how to make a very long story short, I've been in the Commission for more than 20 years in several domains. I started my career with communication, went on into fisheries and maritime affairs for a number of years, almost 14 years, and then I went back into enterprises because I started my career there at what they called at the time DG23, the DG for SMEs, now DG Grow, where I came back after some years, and then I went with DG Grow to Latin America, where I was their representative for the whole subcontinent. And since 2018, I'm back in Brussels, in DEFIS, as it happens, because we were suddenly split. So it was my take to go for DEFIS. And ever since, well, I've been basically dealing with international relations, in particular for Latin America. the global action itself, because well, how can I say that? I was really at the core of this particular idea. So I think you're talking to the right person today.
That's great,
Okay.
Lewis. At that time, I was actually working DG12.
Okay. Okay.
Andreas.
Yeah. It shows our age.
It does. It
by,
does.
by the way.
Yes. Thank you, Geoff and Natasha and everybody at EARSC for this great opportunity today to present to you our services and encourage you to use our services. Today, I'm wearing the hat of the team leader of the Global Action, which I have been since we kicked off last summer. I am with a major consultancy, which is the lead contractor for this purpose, for this Global Action, which lasts for 3 years. Coordinating a diverse consortium that provides all the different services under the Global Action, and been in Brussels for every time I say it, it's more years. So it's been 14 years by now. In background is I'm
just a junior.
Yes, raised and born in Germany, studied in France. So I'm very happy here to be on board for European projects, helping European companies reach out to the world.
Well, that's what we're here for as well. So that's why it should be an interesting
Geoff,
discussion.
forgot 2 important points. I've been once upon a time I was in charge of the Copernicus Academy network, which is relevant relevant to our public, and I'm also in charge of the Galileo information centers in Latin America, and this is why Andreas does not get replies from me the minute after.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe this is described as space diplomacy. Perhaps you could just explain to us what is understood by space diplomacy.
Okay.
Lewis?
Yeah, thank you, Geoff. Look, the word diplomacy, for the non-expert always recalls, what does it recall to your mind? Cocktails, no, and nice parties and all that. But as a matter of fact, without diplomacy, we would not be able to travel because you would not be able to have a passport nor a visa. You would not be able to sell your products and services worldwide because there would be no economic relations with third countries, so to speak. So the importance of diplomacy is, how would I say, sometimes watershed, but it is, as a matter of fact, a core element in whatever we do outside our country of origin. Having said that, in the particular field of space, uh, to a certain extent, this was lacking, because until quite recently. Because why? Because we've been so busy developing the EU space program and the different components that that people were rightly so concentrated on the program itself. But it came to a point where we realized that we had developed a very successful global program, and if I may say so, it's one of the very few EU truly global programs, because you can actually use Galileo and Copernicus and benefit from its services worldwide. And we realized that that we were not actually taking stock of the advantages that this could give, not people, eurocrats in Brussels, but industry all over Europe. And this is precisely why we actually decided to launch this program, which is the Global Action is a commission-run program. It's financed by the Commission. It's a service contract, so it's not a grant, which makes things a little bit different. And it's a service contract financed through the Foreign Partnership Instrument. So the international component of this action is very much on the forefront. It's more international than space, I would say.
What can be more international than space?
Exactly. This is what I always say. What can be, it's one of the global commons, so to speak. It's something where people actually get to understand each other. And you see it in the International Space Station, and you see it everywhere. When people talk about space, you go to EGNOS, and the probabilities of compromise is so much bigger than in many other areas. So it's really something that that nations and individuals take are very much into this international aspect of it. But having said that, it was not developed, and this was, or very seldomly, or very patchworky development. We had, of course, very important international relations in so many aspects relating to the development of the space program, but the very important component related to industry was missing. And
we would certainly agree on the potential and the need to leverage that to not just for industry. Obviously, industry is a beneficiary, but for all our benefit, European taxpayers, etc. So this led to the decision to launch the global action. Andreas, you're leading that action now. So tell us exactly what is involved and how it's working.
Yeah, if for a second we stay with the topic of diplomacy or space diplomacy, which is an important aspect of the global action, that consists of organizing webinars, events, be they hybrid, physical or virtual, as well as study visits of non-EU space stakeholders to the EU. And that has the purpose, of course, to facilitate institutional cooperation regarding space for the different target regions. So each target region with specific objectives to promote the EU space program in that region and build institutional cooperation on that. Now, maybe a bit more relevant for our audience here today is, of course, the business-to-business aspect. And that consists essentially of two things. One, market reports. They are already on our website. Next time Louis speaks, I'll take a second to type that link into the chat. Market reports for all our 8 target regions, where they're publicly available on the website. So any European business, and of course also non-European businesses, can have a look at them, can download them, and identify opportunities for them, as well as challenges, of course, that may exist in certain parts of the world for EU businesses. That's sort of the general service we provide. On top of that, in a much more targeted and customized way, is our business coaching, which I think we will delve into that in detail later. But in a nutshell, that consists of a permanent open call to which EU businesses can apply. And if selected, they receive as a first step training and information about the EU space program if they come from outside the EU, or about international markets if they're from the EU. And on that basis, step by step, the business coaching process proceeds until we have identified potential matches and give each pair, each match, then customized business coaching, be it legal, commercial, technical, intercultural, whatever we identify as the needs, on the basis of a network of around 50 experts we have all around the world, with the view to help them reach a commercially beneficial agreement between them. So that's what we provide for the businesses. Having said that, the business is of course also invited to join our publicly available webinars to see what are the hot topics in each region, what is the European Commission discussing with the partners there.
So, I mean, EARSC is really concerned with EO services and looking after the EO services, promoting the EO services sector in Europe. So clearly, we hope that that's a strong part of the global action. Are there any priorities between different aspects of space competencies in Europe, whether it's upstream building satellites, launching satellites, delivering services for Galileo or for Copernicus? Do you have any priorities that you're working to, or is EO services a priority?
We'll lose. Yeah.
Andreas.
Yeah. Within the global action, we don't discriminate. So we're very much open to any business that in any way or shape or form makes use of the EU space program. And in that sense, we don't have priorities. We want to help European businesses. There are lots of opportunities out there. And in that sense, we don't prioritize. Everybody's welcome.
You said in there that, sorry, Lewis, you want to add?
Yeah, there's actually no imbalance behind the scenes. The Commission is not thinking we want to help the EU community before the EGNOS or whatever. There's nothing like that behind this. It's as Andreas said, full and open, as Copernicus is, full and open for everybody, for large companies, for very small companies, one-person companies as well, you name it. Space agencies, research institutions, you name it. And there are no quotas, something which is very important, and that people, when you're outside the institution, so to speak, it's always like, are they looking for, particular types of enterprises or whatever? There are no quotas whatsoever. We are not aiming at supporting companies from the south, vis-a-vis the north, or the west, vis-a-vis the east. There's no such thing.
Okay, I want to pick you up. Sorry, carry on. Well, there's a couple of things I want to pick you up on, because in what you said, Lewis, there you talked about space agencies and research institutes. You see those as beneficiaries of the program as well, or in what way would they be part of the program?
Exactly, because it's okay. You can there's numerous ways in which you can help the internationalization of the EU space community. The most blunt, so to speak, is helping out the space business community. So the companies. That's the most obvious. But behind the scenes, you also have a lot of institutions which are not specifically companies, but which work hand in hand with companies, with SMEs, with big and small companies. And these institutions have to have also the opportunity to get in touch with their peers in other parts of the world, because if we don't do that through the action, nobody's going to help them out to do that.
Okay, maybe we'll come back to that point. I think from our point of view, we would say, well, we would expect to see industry sort of directly involved there, because that's where the real returns would come. And Andreas, you made a comment about I think you said companies, but you said participating to the EU space program or contributing to the EU space program. And so does that mean that companies have to be in some way working with Copernicus or Galileo, or would companies with their own commercial offerings also be able to benefit from the action?
Absolutely the latter. There is no requirement to have any sort of formal or institutional partnership with Copernicus, Galileo. So any company in the widest sense making use of it without formalized agreements is welcome to apply for the business coaching. And if I just may add, also going back to the previous question, because it's always so obvious to me that I forget to mention it, the business coaching service is free of charge. This is a free service to the companies and the participating institutions, research institutions. I keep forgetting that point, but I think for an audience, it's not always that obvious. So just wanted to point that out.
Oh, okay. maybe it's a good point to skip directly to that, as we've brought it up a few times. It's come naturally into the conversation. I think you have a few slides to explain what it's all about. So maybe you want to just explain to people what the business coaching activity is.
Yes, and before I do that, I'd also like to point out that we have our workstream leader for business coaching in the audience, Catherine Lanvin. So she stands by for any specific questions also to answer.
Okay.
Let me then briefly open the presentation. So in a nutshell, here you see the process for the business coaching, which starts with the registration for our open call, which is permanently open all the time until November 2023. And then at certain cutoff dates, we build cohorts. And if they are selected, then they receive information and training about opportunities and the EU space program, as I said earlier. On that basis, we identify matches, and for the identified matches, we provide then the targeted coaching in line with their needs and the gaps. And at the end of that, of course, we would like to see, as in the ideal case, an agreement that benefits the two sides. Also, just to visualize what I mentioned earlier, for non-EU entities, they can learn about the European Space Program, whereas the EU entities, they learn especially about how to go international in the space value chain. The matchmaking entails a range of networking online events and our support to find the right partner in these events that has the highest potential and is complementary to them. This is just more details on the coaching process, which involves, that, as I said, identification of gaps, timeline, milestones, and then we assign one or several experts from our pool from around the world to help these companies build that partnership. That's just more on the benefits, which you will also find on the website, and a little bit of practical information. Who is eligible on non-EU sites? Any legally established company or institution or organizations, as we said earlier. Also research institutions, think tanks, public, private enterprises, all kinds and sizes. Of course, they should not be sanctioned by the EU. That I hope would go without saying. And we do ask for financial figures over the last 3 years, just to have an idea on the potential. And the same applies more or less to European companies, where we can also go into that later on. As I said, all sizes are welcome. But of course, large companies oftentimes do not require such services because they're already active in international markets. So de facto, it's a bit more geared towards SMEs, but as I said, any company or any entity of any size is welcome to apply. And that is all done via our website. So much for the business coaching in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to add something which is important. We're not targeting only pairs of entities. Okay, so it may well happen that little consortia build up. You can have 2 or 3 companies that go together. They want to do business in you name it, in Indonesia or in Australia, you build up a little consortium and they team up with their Australian or their Brazilian counterparts. So it's not necessarily a one-to-one game we're talking about.
But do they have to show some links before they come to the program, or
No,
so there's no requirement to already have identified a partner in
no,
another company,
no,
another country? No.
no. The objective, as a matter of fact, the objective of this action is to increase the size of the cake. Okay, so we want to put the space item, as it were, as a catalysis for doing business outside Europe in many other different sectors. So it's not only about space. Of course, space companies are the most important here for obvious reasons, because they have the knowledge, they have the expertise. But when I'm talking about these mini groupings of enterprises, you can very well have one or two space, purely 100% space company meeting with, you know, two or three other companies who do not necessarily have any particular experience in the domain of space. This is the whole point. We want to increase the size of the cake.
So what then would determine in terms of the experience, competencies, what will determine the participation of the program in that case? If let's take an agricultural supply company comes to you saying, we want to enter further into the market in Argentina or whatever, we believe there's a role for space, but we've no experience. You would still be able to help them.
Yes, you put a very nice example. Imagine you're building tractors and you want to go to India, okay? Which is a very large country, etc., etc., etc. Maybe you have, you know, an interest in not only exporting your tractors, but exporting your tractors with a Galileo device incorporated into the tractor. So there you need to team up an experienced EU space company together with the tractor company so that they both go hand in hand to India.
So how are you reaching out to the companies in the other sectors? How are they being made aware of this opportunity? Because I mean, clearly from EARSC's point of view, that's very interesting, and we have plenty of companies who will be willing to partner with the agriculture company or with whatever, not for Galileo receivers, but for you know, information regarding to crop health or whatever. So we were, you know, the companies within EARSC and offering service would be extremely interested to know how to be able to work with the global action in order to find those partners.
Andreas, do you want to answer or shall I?
Please go ahead.
Shall I? Yeah. No, basically, I mean, this is about outreach. Okay, and this is why we've met not only with the EU space community, but with many different actors, including our delegations worldwide, etc., etc. The whole point is that this has to be known. You're absolutely right, Geoff. This has to be known by interested or potentially interested stakeholders. And this is something our team is working on a daily basis. And we keep on insisting that we have to increase our outreach outside the specific space sector. In other words, in other terms, because when you go to certain types of countries, and pardon me my bluntness, you will not have a space sector, full stop. It does not exist. or it is very, very little, or you only have 2 actors or 3 actors, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
So in those situations, what we need to do on both sides is incorporate in this, in this dynamic, companies which are not necessarily acquainted with space facilities.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe there'll be further questions around that sort of boundary and how to understand it. Andreas, in your slides, you talk about companies. It wasn't terribly clear whether they needed to have experience in export markets. But there was something in your slide that suggested that was the case. Is it the case, or if a company comes saying, "Well, I really want to develop my export business, can you help me?" Can it be that open, or do they have to be more precise?
Yeah, Katrin, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't need to have experience in it, but they have to have a somewhat of an idea where they want to go and what resources they want to put there. So that we can see the potential. Of course, if they have a first experience, they're still eligible for the service if they want to enter new market or penetrate markets where they already are deeper. But it is not a prerequisite that they already have extensive international experience.
Did Katrin want to comment? Or?
Yes, I would say I agree. It's like soft criteria, but not one of the hard criteria to judge if they can go further.
Okay, so it can be an advantage to have some experience at least. Dietrich Heitz answered in the chat, but maybe we can verbalize the answer to that. I don't know, Dietrich, you asked about the eligibility to register if you come from Switzerland, and I think the answer in the chat has been no. But that just leaves me a little bit confused because you were talking about EU and non-EU companies. I don't know, do you want to add to that, Dietrich, or we'll just carry on and try and answer? Katrin or Andreas?
Well, what we can say is that we're really looking at what are the highest potentials based on our analysis and also analysis done previous to the global action, given that also resources are limited. So that's why there is a list of target countries to make sure that we harness really the most likely potential.
Okay. So the key thing there, non-EU, is seen as a market opportunity, and whereas Switzerland would see themselves, or Dietrich would see themselves as sort of benefiting from the activities of global space, and that they're not available, they're not eligible on that side of the equation.
I pasted the link to the FAQ on our website, which has the list of eligible countries for the business coaching.
Okay, that's clear. I hope to everyone. There was also we talked about SMEs, and the sector is full of SMEs. We consider 95% of the companies in our sector are SMEs, and Jolana has asked a question also about SMEs, but that was more about coming back on what I'd said earlier about having already agreements. How do you see particularly favouring SMEs in the action?
As I said, it's not particularly favouring them.
Okay.
Entities from all sizes can apply for the open call. But what we've seen so far and what we anticipate also going forward is that such a service is of more relevance to SMEs than it would be to large companies. Let's say, if I may say so, Airbus does not need the global action to expand to Australia.
No.
So,
I used to work for Airbus. Very well.
And in that sense, de facto, we're more focused on SMEs, but remain open to applicants of all types.
Okay, so everyone can apply if they wish.
Geoff, I have to say that that the definition of European SME is very large indeed. So this is, I mean, I don't have the figures on top of my head, but if I'm not mistaken, it's up to 250 employees, which is, to my mind, a very large company, and up to, I think it was 2 million euro output, so a yearly output, or
I
even
think
more.
it's more than that.
It's more than that.
It could even be 50. I'm not sure. It's
10
not
or
50.
I mean, I'm not sure. No, the 2 million was for the very small SMEs up to five persons. So you know, so the concept is very, very large, and it actually encompasses about 97% of all companies in Europe.
And on top of that, each country in Europe, not each country, but some countries have a different definition of SME than the European Commission does. For example, the German Mittelstand oftentimes encompasses companies up to 1,000 employees, and with quite some experience also internationally already. Those are perfectly within the target group for the business coaching service as well, if they want to enter new markets or need support in their existing international activities.
Yeah. Okay. Emmanuel Mondon's got a comment about 3 years financial background. I mean, we have a strong focus on startups. We generally consider startup. We place. I mean, I'm not sure there's a real definition of startup, but we place a 5-year cutoff when we're doing the analysis. Do you have any views regarding startups? You know, the 3-year financial background. What did you have in mind there, Emmanuel?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. My rationale is the following. If we are involved in space business or space sector, like Space Cooperative EARSC, the world is your market.
Yeah.
Whatever the number of months or years you're operating. So I've seen in some slides that you are requesting at least 3 years of financial backgrounds. So it means it is not possible for any company younger than 3 years. Did I get it right or not?
That is indeed requested. In terms of how that criterion is handled, I would leave that to Katrin and possibly Louis.
Yeah. Basically, well, basically what we Catherine, sorry. Do you want to intervene?
Well, in the in the end, it's up to, in the criteria, it's up to 3 years, but it's up for the Commission to decide who will pass or not. So, Louis, maybe you can give a comment on that.
It's not an exclusion criteria, so to speak, in the sense what the reasoning behind this is that we do not want to support companies which do not reassure us of their feasibility. Okay, there are many companies out there that, you know, that are registered and say that they have 6 employees, etc. And then you scratch a little bit and there's nothing. So if we see, so that this is why we're asking for this 3 years criteria. If we see that there's a, you know, that there's a successful startup, namely in the sector of space, which on top of it may be well known to us, etc., etc., we will of course take it into account. That is an exception we have to make. But the rule is like this because it is, if you allow me a little bit, we're having our minds on companies from outside Europe. Because when you go outside Europe, when you go to countries which are very far away from Europe, which have very different regulatory measures, very different business ecosystems, if you don't put a limit to that, you might end up, trying to assist people with a cart selling hot dogs. I'm exaggerating here, but you might find yourself in Bangkok. There are hundreds or millions of companies on the street, and they sell everything. We would like to, to put a limit to that. And this is why
Certainly.
we put those conditions.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the slides, the way I read it was that was applied more for the non-EU companies
Exactly.
seeking to benefit, and that
Exactly.
seemed, as long as it's not too rigid, but it did seem a reasonable criteria to apply, because if we don't know the companies, and honestly, in Europe, a company which is less than 3 years old will also have difficulty in moving into the export market. I think they need to have some references, some experience in Europe. So again, if it's not hard and fast, I think it's fair to have it as a goal, and then to evaluate on the back of it.
Exceptions.
Manuel?
The answer is that exceptions are possible.
Yeah.
Happy to be the exception, as usual. Thanks for your...
You're always the exception. Jolana,
thanks for your answer.
Jolana Mungan, you've got a question around the coming back a little bit, I think, on the question of partnerships and having things in place. Do you want to come in and put your question? We don't hear you.
You're muted.
Jolana, we don't hear you.
No. You're muted.
She doesn't seem to be muted,
Okay.
but she's not. Jolana, you're not showing us muted, but we're not hearing you either.
It doesn't work. I could nevertheless answer the question from the chat.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Andreas.
Yeah. Very relevant question indeed. Now it shows that I'm muted. But
no, you're not. You're not. We hear you.
Okay, wonderful. It's a very relevant question in the sense that if you already come to the business coaching with a potential partner, even better. I mean, that already means you've done part of our job, and you have all the more potential, and we can help jump right to the coaching phase potentially. So if you've already concluded international cooperation agreements and you want to come with that partner, you're welcome. And if you've already concluded international agreements and you want a new partner, that's fine as well. So both scenarios work fine, and you are eligible.
Okay. Emmanuel was asking about the regions, which you've put an answer into the chat, Andreas, but maybe you just want to comment, or maybe Catherine, I don't know.
It's essentially the whole world, but each part of the world with certain eligible countries. So we have, starting from Europe, we have the European neighborhood, East and South, which maybe to the non-institutional participant is not that natural, because they think of it more as part of Asia or Africa. Then Africa is a target region. The Gulf countries are a target region. Asia, Australia Pacific, North America, and then Central America and Caribbean combined as one target region, plus South America. So it covers indeed the whole world. But as we said earlier, because of the assessment of the potential, not every single country within that region.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it all soft support, or are there opportunities, trade fairs, shows, trade missions, which are coming out of the action as well?
Trade shows and trade fairs, not specifically. What we do under the space diplomacy is that we have events which can have different nature, which can be with very institutional focus, but they can also have a B2B component. And there, of course, that's then largely advertised, and companies both from the EU and non-EU are encouraged to participate there in roundtables, in our webinars as well, even if they cover institutional topics. You know, a lot of the institutional topics we cover have an impact on the potential for business cooperation. If it's about harmonizing regulations, the European space program being adopted, of course, that opens also the door to businesses. So in that sense, there is sort of a synergy, but the global action as such does not organize trade fairs, let's say.
No, not to organize, but to participate in trade fairs in other in some of the regions or countries.
We always scout for participants for our services, and in that sense, our expert network is often, as these experts, they're often wear different hats, but they are present at industry events and fairs, and they're scout for participants to be encouraged to make use of our services.
Okay. So then they would come back to you and say, we're looking for this, and you would initiate the sort of the partnership search, looking for partners to work on particular topics.
Yes, and encouraging them, of course, to apply to the open call for business coaching. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we've been active in a number of countries around the world. We have EARSC has partnership agreements with a number of different organizations in Japan, Australia, Chile, India, and one or two others I'm forgetting. And we launched a program sort of 2 years ago, which was looking to try to help companies find business in Australia and Chile. We picked two priorities. That was heavily affected by the global pandemic, where we envisaged organizing trade missions, but suddenly we couldn't. Has your approach been conditioned by the inability to travel, or has it been affected by the COVID?
Yes, absolutely. So the project was conceived, let's say, I think before COVID, and then sort of we started under COVID, presuming that it would be over very soon. And knock on wood, right now it looks like it's going the right way. But we certainly have had to resort for the events to more virtual or hybrid formats so far than we would have wished, and hope to become more hybrid in the sense that we increase the physical part under the hybrid, and hopefully within the lifetime of the global action also see some fully physical events.
Yeah. No, I mean, we obviously it's affected all of us. We hope to have our first sort of really physical event next month now. Well, I'll talk about it at the end, but Expandio and the Fire Forum.
On the other hand, I have to say that not everything is so negative, because this hybrid or this purely digital way of working has enabled a lot of companies to be present where they otherwise could not even dreamt of attending a webinar or a conference in Africa for the African market. We had one this very afternoon. In other circumstances, this is an absolute no-go for many companies. So I think there's a positive side to this. I'm not justifying it, but because I personally think it's horrible, but there's a positive downside to this.
Personally, I've become very used to working from home. Yeah, I think we agree that there are certainly a lot of advantages, but there comes a point when we miss the sort of the ability to sort of stand in the corner and have a quiet chat, or to bump into people in the corridor as it is. Yeah. Emmanuel, you've got an interesting question. I think some of it's already been answered, but please come in and a number of dimensions, number of elements to that question.
Yeah. So first of all, what is the overall budget for this initiative? Because you were mentioning 21, 23. And I had a look at the website, and there is no mention on whomever is implementing it. So is it the European Commission itself? Is it through ELSPA or whatever European agency, or is it through a contractor, a third party? Thanks.
The question on the role of EUSPA buried in there. Yeah.
Well, this is as I said before, this is a foreign partnership instrument action funded by the so-called FPI. It's receiving 6 million euros for this, and it's not the okay. The Commission is in the lead for obvious reasons because it's a service contract. Okay, this is not a grant. This is a service contract, which means that Andreas and his team work for us. So on the basis of what we actually request. So voila, we work. The answer to your question is that we work with a consortium which is headed by Andreas.
Indeed.
And there was the tender launch for this just before the lockdown, just at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020.
Correctly.
Yeah,
Correctly.
so we had a lot of discussion around it at the time. But do you see? Would you carry this on, Lewis? Would DG DEFIS continue this role, or is that something you would see EUSPA picking up in the future?
And EUSPA, to be very honest with you, has nothing to do with this because this is, as I said, a Commission initiative.
Mm.
It's not even financed, as I just said, by DG DEFIS.
Mm.
So we are fully dependent. I mean, we are all the Commission, but but the FPI is somehow a sort of a hybrid service in the Commission because it's half the way through the Commission service and half working for the External Action Service.
Mm.
So they have this double hat. They are actually physically located at the EEAS. And it really, this type of funding really depends on them. So it's actually in their work program where we've obviously fought internally to have this financed, but we cannot say it will be financed in the future or not. I mean, it really depends on something which is still in somebody's mind for next year, I suppose.
I mean, it's a very important activity, and I mean, certainly we would hope that it would continue in some way. And you know, it's also something that you know, as I said earlier, we have a project where we're supporting in Australia, Chile. We have a local representative on the ground in Australia. We have partnerships in Chile. And you know, we hope to be able to maintain those as well. So I think there's a lot that can be done to support the sort of space diplomacy and to try to leverage this very large European investment in the space program into further benefits outside those which are the key target for benefiting the European institutions. Copernicus is a public program for public benefit, but we can leverage it to deliver other benefits as well. So I think one of the sorry, go on.
Yeah, so it's I mean, if the question was directed to know if this is financed in through the EU space program, the answer to that question is no.
Yeah, that's that.
So
that's correct.
and to be very honest with you, I don't see our space program putting some money aside for this kind of activity because we are in shortage of resources and there are so many different other priorities to be tackled that I don't see it. I
No.
mean, things may change, but
Well, the space program is
don't
the space
see it.
program, but what we're talking about is leveraging that in other areas, and you know, to bring other funding sources in, whether it's to support SMEs or the international partnerships as you described for this. That's great, and as the association, we're very happy to support that and to try to build the arguments to help continue that funding, or to bring other funding sources to bear.
I mean, DG INPA, for instance, is putting a lot of political interest into digital and space.
Yeah.
And they're quite, as you may be well aware of, they're being quite active in this regard.
Yeah.
So so policy-wise, and even with financial assistance, this is building up. In Africa, Latin America, in particular in Africa and Latin America, but you know, I think it will, you know, through the EU Global Gateway, this will eventually enlarge itself to other areas of the world.
What can we do more? What can we explore further to do more of this type of activity? And Andreas, do you have any perspective on this?
You mean beyond the global action?
Yeah, or to beyond the global action and to sustain the global action.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a comment in the chat going in the sense of centralized tender service of global tenders outside the EU. I'm not speaking here in my role as team leader of the global action, because I don't think that will happen under our auspices. But that, of course, as a permanent service, could of course be helpful to European companies.
I mean, there are a number of, you know, there are a number of how would I say, programs and networks run, managed or financed by the European Commission, which could, you know, which could become helpful in this regard. And I just mentioned DG INPA, but DG GROW also has, you may know about the European Enterprise Network, or the BICS, the Business International Association. So all these support activities or networks, programs could eventually be, and this is why I was making a little bit of, you know, putting some pinpointing the fact that the idea behind this exercise is to increase the number of EU space users. Okay, because now we have a very large community, but it can be X time bigger. And this is the point. For our circumstances today, it might sound a little bit far-fetched to think that we can increase n-fold the number of users and developers using on a daily basis in their regular work EU space capacities. But at the end of the day, if we have a hindsight on 10 years from now or 15 years from now, I think this is what we should aim at. Making many more services, develop many more products, many more sectors engaged into the use of EU space capabilities. And this is only going to be happening with adequate support, of course, by you, by organizations like yours, but by many others, which may not necessarily be in the space domain right now.
opens a whole complete new set of questions. But I'd missed a couple of questions within the within the chat. I want to lead into one of them, just picking up a little bit on what you've said there, Lewis. We consistently find in our industry survey that more than 50% of the market is with public customers, it's governmental customers, and buying services because they support policy activities, and that doesn't seem to change. Ingo is building on that particular point in relation to the overseas market, and Andreas, you provided a certain comment in response because I'd missed the question. Ingo, do you want to come in and explain your point? Is Ingo still with us? Okay.
No.
I think he's no longer among the participants.
Okay.
Looking through the list, which is alphabetical.
He left in disgust by not being asked to bring forward his question. But so Yolanda, you had another question about EU space ambassadors in the region, so focal points. I think Andreas talked about 50 different experts around the world in different regions. Is that linked, or Andreas, do you have focal points? Yolanda, have you got your microphone working this time? No. No, we don't hear you. I'm really sorry, we don't hear you. I think you must be switched to another microphone or something. We don't hear you, Yolanda. I'm sorry. Again, now you're showing us muted, but previously you weren't showing us muted, but we couldn't hear you. No. Andreas, do you want to just comment?
Yes. So we don't have a formal role of EU space ambassador, but of course, as I said earlier, these experts continuously scout companies in the region. They attend events. They give us feedback on potential candidates. In that sense, they also promote, of course, the EU space program and the services that we provide for non-EU companies to make use of the EU space program. I don't know if Katrin wants to add to that, because in her role as workstream leader, she is also coordinating that expert network. Did I miss anything, Katrin?
No, but just one add, we have one expert among the participants. Carmen is from Bulgaria joining us. So yes, we have experts all over the world that then take matches at their hand and walk the first steps with them when they start a cooperation. So this is of course very valuable support from the certain regions that we can offer in the form of the business coaching.
Okay, thank you. So Carmen has some experience of working with you then. We know Carmen quite well as a director of EARSC. So Carmen, do you want to comment?
Thank you very much, Jeff. Of course, it's very, how to say, in time, maybe action of the European Union, especially taking account that around Europe, the political situation is not very quiet. And we practically work for the region of Black Sea and the former Soviet Union republics. But now I think it's a little bit difficult to promote and to plan to do something. Maybe we can wait a few months to see what and how will be developed the situation. But I think that this initiative can be very useful to extend the influence of the European space policy to especially to the neighborhood of Europe.
Okay, I can imagine it helping in Bulgaria, yeah. Okay.
And historically, we have some relation, and this is help. And time to time we can speak on the language with them, which is more easy for them to understand the situation and the topics.
Okay. And
of course, I'm happy to promote and to extend the good practice and the work and what EARSC made in Europe. I hope that we can be able to make out of Europe too.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any connection to the regional group, Carmen?
Yes.
So the EARSC regional group was what I was.
As you know, I'm a very big fan of the transfer of technology and knowledge, and this is also the practice which we try to apply in these projects.
Okay, great. We've overrun our time a little bit. That's not a big problem, but thank you, Luis and Andreas and Catherine for coming in. Do you have any sort of last comments that you'd like to make?
We'd of course like to thank you for the great opportunity and also for the nice format, very interactive. And of course, we encourage everybody in the room who's eligible to
apply.
to apply for our business coach.
And you've put all the links into the chat, I think. So everybody, they've got no excuses for not being able to find you or find the initiative.
Yes, you're also welcome, of course, to share the slides I showed with the participants if there are no data protection objections to that. And
from our point of view, it's only from any of you have any concern. Luis?
We don't.
Yeah, from my side, just thank you all for the invitation. And again, my particular door is always open. If you have any particular ideas, suggestions to make in this regard, yes, I can imagine that the list. But do it, Geoff, because I mean, by exchanging, you get to conclusions quite. It can be quite easy to get to conclusions. So thank you so much, and we really hope that you can find added value to the services provided to the Global Action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your door may not be left standing very soon, but no, I mean, as I've said throughout, we very much welcome this. We think it's necessary. There are certainly ideas for further things to do, and we'd certainly like to discuss some of those and to see if there are ways to put those into practice. Next EOcafes are on the screen. So as you know, it's every Thursday at 4 o'clock. Every other Thursday at 4 o'clock. Every Thursday it would be an incredible challenge. So every other Thursday at 4 o'clock. The next one is looking at Earth observation in support of humanitarian assistance. Big topic these days. We've got some interesting speaker there from World Bank and others. There's an event looking at investment, which is only for EARSC members. We very rarely confine the EOcafe, but we do work on behalf of our members. Our members pay our fees, so we do like to sometimes do things just for them. So there will be an EOcafe on the 16th of June, just for members on the investment outlook. And then to close the first half of this year, the first season of this year, on the 30th of June, we'll have a focus on Destination Earth to try to unravel what's going on in Destination Earth and see where opportunities may or may not lie for industry, but to understand the initiative further. So that's the next EOcafes, and then I'm sure the next slide is about Expandio and FIRE. Please come and join us 14th, 15th of June. It's a physical meeting in Brussels, but you can also join online. Please register. This is the EARSC annual event, and we hope the EO Services Industry annual event. We held an online version last year. We held, it was not held in 2020, much to our disappointment. And we will come back to a physical meeting this year, but with always the ability to attend online as well. So we look forward to that, and hopefully as many of you as possible will be able to join in one way or another. And with that, let me close this EOcafe. Thank you very much to everyone for joining us. Yeah, we put it on for your benefit. If you're not here, then obviously we miss you. So we like to see you here. We like to have the conversations that precede and follow the EOcafe. Thank you again to Lewis and Andreas and Catherine for their input and their wise words this time. And now, if anyone wants to say anything, please feel free just to open your microphone and come in and join the conversation.